Welcome to This Weekend Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights.
Hello everybody and welcome to another This Weekend Coworking weekly recap. This week I am joined by the awesome Freddie from Patch. Freddie, how are you?
Not actually very well today, which is why I haven't got my video on, but it's very nice to be part of TWIC. Of course, I read the newsletter religiously, and it's lovely to be here.
Well, thank you for being a patron brand as well, and for being a long-time reader and supporter of what we do here. Mike is out. Freddie volunteered to jump right in and have a conversation, and then, I felt a little bit ill this morning, so we're going to do it video only from me. What you'll probably notice is I'm not in the white void I'm normally in when I'm doing these sessions. I'm actually here in Room's showroom in New York City. They are the sponsors of this week's newsletter, this week's podcast. A huge thank you to them. If you didn't see the newsletter, go and look at that gorgeous photo that they sent us to share with you. If you know Room, they've built a pretty good reputation in building these really functional phone booths. Freddie, do you have any rooms right now in any of the patches?
So we've never adopted Room, but I'm a big fan of their products. I mean, there's a bunch of other kind of practical choices and suppliers that we work with and so on. And I think at the time there was such massive demand, we couldn't even get access to them. But I've always thought, they've kind of led the way in re-identifying or rebranding what acoustic spaces look like. And I'm not saying that as a favor to you or to Room. I think they kind of arrived on the scene and kind of announced how you can be productive in a different way in shared environments. I think the idea of open desking, people kind of cross-talking, shouting across each other, I think is a bit of a fear for a lot of people.
Yep.
And I'm just like super impressed with how well they've executed, how good it looks. And I think they've inspired actually a kind of whole sub-industry around them.
They really have, but they've also taken a step out of that now. This week, they actually announced the new acoustic lounge. That's taking the technology that they perfected in these phone booths and moved it into, I think, 5 pieces of modular furniture across 4 different configurations. I'll show you some of that in the B-roll now. But just to take a look at the way that they're taking soundproofing and acoustic furniture and modular furniture and bringing it into that open place. As you were saying, Freddie, everyone loves the idea of these open plans, but when you really want to kind of get work done away from your desk, we want to just have a quick huddle. There's so many distractions, right? There's sound, there's people moving. So they've got these really interesting filters. It's kind of a nice tallish wall that kind of separates these pieces of furniture, but you can also reshuffle them and restructure them based on what you need in the space. So an absolute no-brainer for co-working spaces.
Well, they look good, and I think they're reasonably priced. As I say, right, there are lots of people I think have followed them, but I think your listeners should definitely be taking a look.
So we're going to now jump into the news. Freddie, I know that you've had a bit of a rough night, but you did read the newsletter, which I'm very, very grateful for. Yeah, was there any story top of mind that you really wanted to dive into first as our guest host today?
Yeah, look, there's always great stuff in your newsletter, and like big shout. When I first started Patch in, I guess, like 2020 at my kitchen table, it was so hard to find reliable information, and like I always look forward to your newsletter because it helps me build like a really clear picture of what's going on around. And what I like in particular is I think you take quite a broad definition to not just co-working, but kind of a lot of things adjacent to co-working. And the one that jumped out to me today was BubbaDesk. So this is a company in Australia, which I'd come across them briefly, but hadn't looked into them much until today. They create spaces that are both co-working and childcare. And that is a topic which is so hot. It's actually the original drive for me to start Patch way in 2016, 17. I was looking into this. Couldn't make it work in the UK market. I know a lot of people have tried this. Yeah. I think there is a particular challenge around regulation, also cost. That means that it's hard to make it work in the UK market, but I am convinced that there is an opportunity here. And it was just so nice to see that it's working. And in particular for them, they seem to have landed some corporate accounts. I think that is the way to build this company. It's such a benefit to companies, to large employers, to know that they can retain their talent, encourage, incentivize parents of young children, particularly working mothers who are so often forgotten about. And it's both a sort of social scandal, frankly, as well as a financial scandal, whichever way you look at it, that we just don't treat parents of young children with the respect they deserve. So yeah, I was just like really happy to see that. And I guess on this topic, there is a company in the UK, Kind House, or Kind House, I suppose, which is the latest and I think a really, really well executed version of this that's growing in London. So I'm like super passionate for that to come through. So yeah. hopefully some inspiration for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Just some background for folks who are maybe listening in, this may be the first time. Maybe you're a fan of Freddie, you don't know what the newsletter is. Back a couple of weeks ago in the newsletter, we announced that BubbaDesk and Whatso, which is a publicly traded kind of REIT over in Australia, who own a bunch of co-working spaces, they formed a partnership to bring more BubbaDesks into their network. So we're seeing both supply and demand being played very, very well here by BubbaDesk over in Australia. Completely agree with you. There is an underserved market of, caregivers who need space that is designed around bringing young kids into workspaces. And it's, yeah, you've said it, that it's been tried a whole bunch of times. It's great to see kind of strides being made and sustainability being reached. We recently had a guest over from Baltimore who this is their whole model. They've nailed it. They've actually bought their own building now, and they're going to be expanding that out to other surrounding regions, really tying together this childcare and co-working concept, so much so that it's an undercurrent trend that we've been watching for the last couple of months and years here at the newsletter. And we're actually going to be doing a deep dive later in the year into the different models, what's working, what hindered innovation in the UK, in Germany, and other countries where regulation around childcare is so high that it actually affects how quickly companies like these can innovate and implement and try and test and grow.
I guess what it speaks to is the almost like the humanization of work, which absolutely is the theme that I started Patch around as well, which is like, who are the end users, who are the customers, and how are we building spaces for them, just as we do in every other sector, be it in real estate or kind of consumer, whatever, any shape of the world, right? We start with the user of the product, their problems, and working back from that. And it is insane that 50%, if we just broadly take the female population, or let's say the population who are mothers in particular, right? It's kind of insane that we wouldn't assume that, or caregivers more broadly, that we assume that people can go to an office 9 to 5, commute in and out. I mean, the world doesn't work like that. Like, it's worked like that for some people for a long time, and
Yep.
those people tend to be the decision makers.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, you nail it on the head. It's also that choice that we're now seeing employees being given. Going back to the story, these companies are not relocating into BubbaDesks, right? They're giving access to these spaces as an employee perk for part of their maternity and paternity programs, as part of their talent strategy. And I think we're seeing that shift, right? People are needing more, wanting more, demanding more. And we're seeing this is 2 of the 3 largest Australian employers now doing it. So I think it's a fantastic vote of confidence from that side of the world. So jumping onto another topic, which is also close to things that you're very, very experienced with. We saw a link shared by Jamie Russo, which looked at how the Maven brand has pre-sold a whole bunch of their spaces in a new location without offering early bird discounts. As someone who's been in an organization that's launched a location fairly recently, congratulations on that again. What do you think about this strategy of using perks or founder member benefits instead of discounting?
I think it's super smart. I mean, I shared it immediately with my team. I think it speaks to the array of brands and quality of product that we're now starting to see in the sector, right? Like, I think for a long time, flexible co-work was lumped into office, and apart from location, it was kind of seen as a utility, right? So it's like, what is the cheapest way that I can get your white box? And really, differentiation was kind of around the edges. But what I really respect here is that you've got a brand that's standing up and saying, no, we know that we are worth the price, right? We're not here to compete on price, and that's something we talk about again internally at Patch. We always say we compete on product, we do not compete on price. If you want the cheapest white box, by all means, go down the road. If that's who you are, and that's fine. It's not a value judgment, right? Just in the same way that there are however many coffee brands that compete on the UK high street, right? You could have a Pret next to a Starbucks, next to a Nero, next to a Costa, and they're all fine next to a Greggs, next to a McDonald's, because they serve different needs, different audiences, and so on. And so we're seeing the same thing. Of course, colleagues of ours, friends of ours have talked about this ad nauseam. And I just really respect this idea of not kind of foregoing that pride and that respect, self-respect almost, for the product, the brand, what you stand for, and having the will to say, this is who we are. And it's not about beating the next person on this price, because that it's just a race to the bottom, but actually saying, turning that into an opportunity, and forgive me, I haven't had the chance to listen to the podcast yet,
No worries.
but turning that into an opportunity and saying, not only will we give you this, free or discounted benefits or amenities, and I'm sure where Jamie goes with this is to say you're also showing them that you have these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we were actually starting to talk about this last week. So if you can show people that you've got whatever the amenities might be, a podcast studio or event space, or all these additional kind of things that you do to bring your product to life, then you can get greater adoption once those benefits roll away. And I make my whole team listen to Jamie's podcast. I mean, for those who don't already listen to it, then I don't know what you're doing. I learn so much from her all the time.
Absolutely huge hat tip to Jamie Russo and the Everything Coworking podcast and the other podcast that she's a co-host on, the Flex Uncensored podcast. Both fantastic listens and both regularly featured in This Weekend Coworking because of the value that they bring. So I want to jump from that into another topic. We saw some data out of a Spanish operator called Cloudworks this week. And we actually saw that they reported an increased top-line revenue. We saw the fact that they launched 2 large locations and they got B Corp certified this year. All great things. What do you think about the numbers coming out of Cloudworks?
So I don't know Cloudwork, the brand, but what this jumped out to me was just where our sector has got to, right? So, it's not that long ago where people didn't really know what co-working was, or the idea of there being emerging brands that were scaling up was just, it was kind of Regis, WeWork landed on the scene, and then a lot of indies. Yep. But that we are talking about an operator in Spain that's growing at 11% a year, that's got a revenue over 11 million euros, that it's up to 30,000 square feet of space, looks like, they're growing again. It's just, it just represented to me as a snapshot in time how much more proliferated the market is becoming and how we are maturing as a sector. So it could have been Cloudwork, it could have been any other feature that has come up through your newsletter. But I think we sometimes, kind of forget actually just how far we've come as a sector. And I think there's a lot of good work, from yourself and others that are kind of banging that drum. And it represents different opportunities, be it on the investment side, the audience side. We need to remember that people understand who we are and what we do better, because that opens up opportunities to, to take that next step forward.
I think it touches on a few things. Yes, we've come a long way. I mean, I got into this in 2013. You came in a little bit after that. There was another post from Andrew from The Brew, another UK operator, sharing how much things have changed since 2010 when they started till today. And the fact that we're starting to see the changes in the market, not only in the way our business operated, but also the way we report on them. For a very long time, talking about profitability in co-working was kind of like, you can't do both, right? You could only do community or you could be a profitable company. And now we're starting to see community-focused operators being like, yeah, we're doing good. We're releasing an impact study. We're, tracking our hyperlocal economic impact, but we're also reporting profits. We're reporting revenue growth across all of our locations. And that is playing into another undercurrent that we're tracking, and that is capital markets are starting to take notice, right? They're starting to see that, hey, this 3 floors in your building that used to be valued at net zero because we couldn't tie a lease to it is suddenly generating more revenue than the rest of the building is, and different variety of channels of revenue that they couldn't get in a traditional lease. And now they're like, well, how do we assess that? How do we value it? But then how do we write loans or underwrite loans against that so that we can start supporting this industry?
Exactly that. And I'll call out a great resource here for anyone who wants to understand that capital market side a bit better, which is UK operator Clockwise, which operates in regional towns, owned by a private equity fund called Castleforge. And Castleforge have written about how to think about a building as a set of kind of reliable income over a period of time when it's flex operated, because you might lose, your occupancy might bounce between sort of 80 and 100%, but it's not going to go to zero. Of course, traditional office leases, they're at 100% until they're not. And, you wrap in all the other acquisition costs and so on. And actually, I think they say you sort of consider the traditional 6% yield as actually it's more like a 3.6%. Whereas you might bump between sort of 4 and 6 or 5 and 7 or whatever it might be when you've got flex revenue coming in and out the building. But generally speaking, your kind of expected outcome is kind of averaged out and supported and much higher. So yeah, as you say, right, like there's just real understanding finally coming through.
Yeah, and I think it's just also great to start seeing growing revenues or even just revenue numbers across the industry. Because for years, all we've seen is desk price values, right?
Yeah.
The average desk price is this, the average capacity is this, but no one's actually been talking about, except for the public companies, no one was really reporting on actual hard revenue numbers. So I think we're definitely getting to that point of maturity where we are starting to see that reporting become more clear. And with PE firms and the banks and everyone else looking at this and writing reports on how to value it, we're getting to a very interesting time where we don't have to bootstrap co-working spaces if you've got the right model.
Yeah, yeah. They're capital intensive businesses, right? But like the market is very clearly there. It's just about finding what the right money is to deploy at the right time in the right way. So yeah, I think finally, finally the message has got through.
Amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it again, because there's another story, another podcast actually, where they went the other way, right? You can take a lease, or you can buy a building, you can be the one that takes all the risk, or you can partner up with landlords. And there's a brand that's very, very well known for doing this. They're called Industrious, in case you've not heard of them. And their head of real estate joined Caleb Parker this week to talk about their strategy and how they are seeing landlords change their tune about what it's like to partner with a co-working operator. Did you have any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, so we take leases, and that's not because we're not wedded to it. I mean, I believe in the business model, so I think there's like a lot of upside that we can capture.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, as we were just talking about, it takes a lot of capital to build these spaces out to operate them, right? And what's an operator got in terms of access to resources? It's not like we've got endless millions to spend on fitting out buildings that might take, 3, 4, 5 years to pay themselves back and thereafter. So landlords just deal at that scale, right? Like as an operator, you might be thinking on a scale over like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions as you scale, right? But as a property owner, property developer, your whole frame of reference is like 10, 100 times bigger. So the idea that the landlord should own the fit out and share in that upside, that profit share with you, building exactly on this capital markets point, is the most sensible, in a kind of blank piece of paper you kind of draw out the model. That is the most sensible way to allocate the expenditure. And I guess I just wanted the opportunity just to shout out what Industrious have done for the industry. It's astonishing, right? They have built out that management agreement. They've done more to educate the market on that management agreement model than anyone else. There are others in the UK, of course, who are doing similar things. But the more podcasts like that, the more papers that are written. Of course, now they've been acquired by CBRE, and Jamie Hodari, the founder, continues to be a very eloquent and publicly visible voice on this. So yeah, I guess the more I took a bunch of notes from listening to this the other day, and I think the more that we can take their offer, really, I think Industrious, they are educating the market, but they're educating their fellow operators as well, right? The more we can take their lead, take up the information they're writing, convert it into our own, in our own conversations, I think the better, because as I say, although we're on leases today, I think management agreements are the way to scale a business with that kind of capital requirement. So yeah, big shout out. And if you haven't come across what they do, then you should certainly take a listen. That podcast is a great way in. I have many favorite podcasts, Hector, and I won't rank them, but of course, anything that Caleb puts out is worth listening to. He has great guests.
Absolutely, and I'm a big fan of Caleb's as well. I'm just thinking it's not about us borrowing their model. I think you're absolutely right about Industrious educating the market. From the way they use data to the way they think about personalization to even, Jamie sharing continuously now that he's in a more corporate role, it goes back to kind of the core of why this newsletter exists and why I started writing it. There's so many great examples of people doing things and sharing it. It just gets lost in the noise, right? There's so many pieces where you put out and you're like, we did this thing, we learned this lesson, it was a hard lesson, but this is what we learned from it. And I heard back from other folks, they were like, oh, that link that Freddie shared was fantastic. And I learned when we built our business in New Jersey based on what Patch is doing. And it's just a fantastic way to bring operators together who want to share ideas and really think about how we all build better and stronger businesses. And that's the fundamentals of everything we do here. So I appreciate you giving us that nod, and also giving Industrious a nod for continuously sharing when they don't really need to, right? So if you don't mind, I want to just geek out a little bit about some AI stuff. I'm not sure, Freddie, how deep you've gone down the AI rabbit hole. Are you AI curious at all?
AI curious is probably a good way of putting it.
Fantastic. So we put a link in this week. It was a video that went viral on almost every channel that we try. And it was a video of coming out of a hackathon in London, actually, from 11 Labs, where they built a way for two voice AI agents to identify that they're both AI agents, but then switch away from using English and use a more efficient tone-based language to communicate so that they can speak to each other. Did you happen to see this video on your social feeds?
No, this sounds terrifying.
It does sound terrifying until you think about the fact that we are seeing AI agents deployed across almost every sector of co-working, from client-facing lead nurture, pre-sale support, all the way through to accounting, into kind of logistics, into making sure the fridges are stocked, all the way back to kind of making sure that off-boarded customers are still nurtured and become alumni and things like that. So we're seeing this deployment of agents, but they're gonna need to communicate at some point. So seeing this in like a video format just kind of really hit that home for me. But yeah, it can be terrifying as well.
Look, there's clearly so much more to play out here. I think the applications of AI are very being worked like every day as we see it kind of in front of us. I think someone was asking how we use it in my business at the moment, and I think, look, like anyone else, we use conversational tools for kind of desktop research, maybe kind of help us throw around some ideas around content. But I think the main applications, the main focus, as I understand it, is just kind of in a different sector and at a different scale, certainly to us at the moment. I think it's very much like an opportunity for optimization around sort of large kind of modeling opportunities. And, maybe the closest application I can see is doing test fits and GAs for new sites that we're looking at. But there's, a business that's growing as fast as we are and is as small and as young as we are, it's like the opportunity cost of trying to figure out how to integrate. Maybe I just sound like a Luddite, but I think the opportunity cost trying to integrate into our flows at the moment is too great. There's probably a bunch of simple stuff that I'm missing. I'm trying to stay focused on what I know works, getting the throughput out the door. I'm listening to seeing what's available, but I haven't seen any kind of killer app being adopted in co-work or even in office. Again, probably at the optimization and at the highest scale around pricing, location analysis, et cetera, But, we've just opened a building in York. We've opened a massive building in Bournemouth, right? Those are both very, very successful and require a lot of hands-on operational product service delivery, right? It's not clear to me that throwing AI at that is the solution right now. But look, as I say, keen to see if somebody cracks it. But I think in our sector at the moment it's noise.
Yeah, you bring up some very valid points, and the reason why I bring it up is because for the last 2-ish months and over the next month, I've interviewed folks who have deployed some form of AI agent into their business in a co-working world, much like we introduced fractional offices and kind of lifted that out of the emerging trends bucket. We're going to be doing the same thing for AI agents in April. So that's going to be a free report that we put out highlighting the ways that different operators have found success, have run into challenges, or have a wish list for all things AI. So really excited to drop that. It's going to be completely free for everybody who is a This Weekend Coworking subscriber. And hopefully, Freddie, that gives you a little bit more inspiration as to maybe there are some quick wins that you could deploy if the opportunity cost is balanceable.
This is what I need Twick in my life, Hector. It's not that I've a closed mind to what it could be. It's just that I haven't seen anything that I'm excited about this moment. But what you've just described is frankly exactly what I need to see. Right, it comes back to what we were saying earlier about making sure that we've always got our eyes and ears open about how we can support this growing sector. Right, the pie is growing very, very quickly. Our collective goal at the moment is that we can all, as operators and service providers and landlords, we can all grow the size of that pie together because the shares will grow with it.
Exactly. And on that note, Freddie, thank you so much for being our guest co-host today. For folks who are listening in and maybe haven't seen one of your amazing links that we've shared, where can people reach out to you?
So easiest way is find me on LinkedIn. So Freddie Fforde, 2 F's and an E in the surname. So it should be easy, or head over to the website, www.patch.work.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Freddie. For everybody else, we will see you again next week. Please keep submitting those links. Let us know what you think of this episode. Thank you. Take care.